You're listening to Trucking Tomorrow, your go-to podcast for exploring and understanding the future of trucking from a carrier's perspective. In each episode, we sit down with industry veterans to discuss what it takes to grow your trucking company in today's world. So let's hit the road with Trucking Tomorrow. Here's your host, Brian Jones.
Welcome to Trucking Tomorrow. I'm your host, Brian Jones, and I'm joined today by Brian Price, who's the president at Farmers Freight. They're a 5-truck fleet in eastern Iowa. Brian's got a great history working both as a family farm and a trucking company, and is a very busy man. He's on the road. He's dispatching, running operations. Brian, thanks for being on the show here.
No problem. It's good to be here.
Just to kick things off, could you just give us a quick intro to Farmers Freight, what you haul, where you operate, and kind of the high level of your operations there?
Yeah, Farmers Freight actually used to be known as Price Farm Trucking, but they tried to rebrand it a little bit. We haul mostly dry van freight in Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. I'll branch out a little bit, maybe into Nebraska, down to Missouri. Usually just trying to stay within a few hundred miles of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Trying to be regional, trying to get out and back in one day. All our drivers currently are home every night. We haul, mostly ag products. Being from eastern Iowa, you run across a lot of tractor parts, corn and soybean products, byproducts that have been packaged into totes and stuff like that to put in dry vans. Occasionally we'll branch off into using the hoppers that we have for the farm to haul fertilizer, grains, feed byproducts. In the spring and the summer, we'll get into using liquid fertilizer tanker and doing a little liquid fertilizer tanker to haul around ammonium sulfate and liquid nitrogen.
Yeah, that's a good high level. So basically anything that's ag related, you guys move. So that makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of kind of what you guys move in history has to do with what's around you in Iowa, which is a lot of ag hauling and freight. So how did the trucking side of the business start, right? Because I think you guys had a farm first, and then you were moving your own things, and then the trucking side kind of grew into a thing. How did that get its start on your end?
So, I went to Iowa State University for 5 years from 2005 to 2010. When I got done with that, I worked for a local co-op, and I was doing logistics for them, managing truck logistics for hauling grain, fertilizer, and kind of being in charge of the fall grain hauling, bringing it in from the field, stuff like that. I also did sprayer logistics, lining up and managing the organization of the sprayers and their liquid tenders and making sure everything flows smoothly. And we're not driving all over the countryside from field to field. And late in my tenure there, I worked there for 3 or 4 years, I think. Maybe it was a little longer than that. But when I got to the end of that, I really liked driving truck, and I'd been I'd had my CDL since I was 18. I've had my CDL longer than I have it at this point. And I just got to looking at it, and I looked at the trucks that were out at the co-op, and when a lot of those times those things happen, those guys are totally dependent on you to find them loads and keep them busy. Well, you can only keep them as busy if there's enough grain to sell, and if farmers aren't selling grain and stuff like that. And I thought it sounded like a good idea to maybe have my own truck, but I kind of wanted to get back to the farming operation, and we've got a pretty good size operation in eastern Iowa. And I thought, well, I can drive truck, and I can run a small trucking business, and that would give me an excuse maybe to get back to the farm and use my degree from Iowa State to help at the farm. And that's kind of what it's turned into. And I first started out, I was hauling bakery meal from Anamosa, Iowa, up to northern Iowa, and I was bringing bean meal back or distillers back from northern Iowa down to the river or out to Chicago to get put in containers and stuff like that. And that was mostly just for the experience. I mean, I was using an old Freightliner truck that we had on the farm, um and it was one of those things where you did that for long enough and like, all right, well, yeah, I've learned something. And I look back on those things and I'm like, man, I didn't make a whole lot of money. Well, I really wasn't making a whole lot of money doing that kind of stuff, but I did learn a lot, and it was all right because we utilized an asset that otherwise wasn't doing anything. And didn't take very long after that before we got a truck that was more suited to doing trips like that. And I'm sitting in that truck today. Right now, it's actually like 100 miles from going over 1 million miles on the chassis, and got into that. And then eventually, at some point along the line, a local company was looking for some trucks to do some dedicated stuff with them, and on dry van, and we got into doing that. And when we were doing that, it was dedicated, so somebody was always telling you like where to go, or like, or do you want to go here or you want to go there? Like, we can go out to western Iowa with a load, and they're like, well, I got this load in western Iowa that goes out to somewhere in Kansas. Like, well, I kind of wanted to be home by now. Like, okay, well, I guess you're just gonna have to bounce back empty then. And yeah, you understand that, like, it doesn't really matter to them if you take the load or not. You know, like, they'll find someone to take the load. But I got to looking at that, I'm like, man, I could do it, but if I was in charge of dispatching my own loads, I could do a better job of it, and I wouldn't have to go out and back. And so I got onto onto DAT and started making some connections and finding loads. Like, we got in with a different organization they'd have loads going one way, but if they didn't have anything for you to bring back, you could use that trailer as like a power only move and bring your own load back. So I did that. So we did that. So we take loads out and then we bring loads back. And so that kind of got me started in finding my own loads with some security underneath it. And a lot of times there'd be trailers just dropped, in a local lot. We wouldn't even have to load them. It was a pretty good gig. But at that point in time, we weren't really fully committed to it. But it just kind of snowballed from there. And then eventually we hired somebody to help drive truck and haul grain and do different things and stuff like that. And then it's just kind of grown slowly and methodically into something that's a little bigger than that. I mean, we're at 4 or 5 trucks right now, pretty much running every day. And it's just kind of evolved into something. We've developed a lot of relationships. We got to the point where we're consistent about, we're always available. People know where we're going to be. We run 400 to 500,000 miles across 4 or 5 trucks, and we're always in the same places. It's just kind of developed to the point where it's, we don't really rely on the farm anymore, and the farm doesn't really rely on us, but it's nice to have each other. If I need some help hauling grain, I've got guys that can come help haul grain. Or if the farm needs some trucks for a couple of days, we've got a couple of guys that are truck drivers who can come drive truck and can run grain hauling on a Saturday afternoon or something like that. We can find people. It's pretty easy to find people in between. We probably are getting them more to the point where they're really 2 separate entities, but they're always going to be partners. That's just kind of a large overview of how it got to be where it is now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really helpful. And I know a lot of folks have different entry points, and just having, the farm experience probably feeds into what you guys haul. I'm curious on the customer side, if there's any bit of your background knowledge, just general awareness of the farming side that helps you as you go and talk to customers, given you just know more about the farm side, or is it more just kind of a separate thing where your experience doesn't really matter as much for coming into the trucking side of the business?
I think the thing that's most valuable from our farm experience is we have the ability to fix things. We have a place to fix things.
Mhm.
We have a shop we can put inside. I think for the most part, like our experiences, we can see some of the things that we're hauling and, kind of know what that's for, or what's that do, or especially like when you're hauling seed, like you can know something about like the seed that's being hauled too. Like, hey, I was looking for a load of a certain variety of seed. Do you know, is it on that trail? Is it going to be on that trailer? And knowing how to find out the answer to that question
Mhm.
a little quicker. I don't know that my farm background matters too much in, making sales and things to customers. I think it does help me. I have a pretty good idea of, how things work and stuff like that.
I know that you mentioned you operate in pretty specific areas, right? You operate regionally. Your customers kind of know where you're going to be. I'm curious how narrow that is and how you think about that. Do you specifically plan ahead of time? Hey, we're only going to these, 10 places, 5 places, or is it a little bit more of an outcome, right? You just this is just where we're going, and then we've had a lot of customers there, so we continue to go there. Like, how intentional is the place? Like, how do you think about that where you operate?
I think I'm really intentional about where we go and what we do. And honestly, a lot of the stuff that comes to us, we may see it come to us from different people.
Mm.
Um, we do a lot of brokered freight just for the simple fact that it's, the brokers serve a role for us too.
Mm.
We don't have to do some of these sales calls and stuff like that. And it fills holes in our schedule that we can fill in gaps. And, we don't have an obligation to cover every load.
Mm.
But it's, the other day I had a load that went from, actually this morning, we had a load that went down to Burlington, Iowa. And for me, that's a tough place for me to get in and out of. You don't always see a whole lot of spot freight coming in and out of there. So you kind of like, you're looking for a little more on the front side and in the rates that you take down there and stuff like that. You just know that might be a hard place to get out of without having to bounce around a little bit. So you take that into consideration, stuff like that. I've kind of gotten we do a lot of the same things for the same people a lot.
Mm.
And I like to focus on the efficiency of things. And I don't like to see my guys sit in places for more than an hour. So when someone says, "Hey, I got a load going here," you're like, "Well, where is here?" To get more specific about it, like what receiver does it go to? Because
Okay.
I mean, even in Cedar Rapids too, like I got a load going to here. Okay, all right, which warehouse is it going to? Oh, this one. Like, okay, well, that's the good one of the two. There's two different warehouses for the same company, and one can be painful to get in and out of, and the other one is really easy to deal with. And it's like that with several different places, and especially in Cedar Rapids, that you know they're easy to get in and out of, and this one isn't.
Mhm.
And if you take that into account, like it's probably going to take me 2 or 3 hours to get unloaded there, and you just either avoid them or you get paid up front because I don't like dealing with the tension. I was thinking about it actually earlier today about how many loads I've probably had to bother with the tension on. And if it was more than like 1 or 2% of the loads we've done in the year, I'd be surprised.
Mm.
And I don't know how many loads we did last year. You'd probably tell me better than I could. And I was just that was something else to think about. We've been with Truck Base for about a year right now, and um, I just have a really good understanding of where we're going, what we're doing, and what places are trouble to get in and out of. Like we have a regular lane that goes up into Wisconsin that can oftentimes be difficult to get a reload for. But now you've been out a while, like you know who to call when you get like as soon as you get that load tendered over to you, you're on the phone with someone else going, hey, I'm gonna have a truck up there, on Monday. Do you have a load? You have one of those loads? He's like, not right now, or yeah, I got one. And like, honestly, don't operate off the load board too much because you have a really good idea of who to call to get your reload back out of there and those kind of things.
Yeah, so you know where you've been and you've been there before, and you have a bench of folks you can call to say, hey, this is who got me back last time I was there.
Yeah. And really like having like a handful of really good customers that can cover just about every need we have.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do it for them once or twice, making sure they know to call you next time they get one. Like I get messages every day, like, hey, I got another one of these. I got another one of these. Hey, can you cover for me? And like, it gets to the point sometimes where you're like, it's just a little too last minute. I can't get somebody there for it today, or maybe you could finagle things a little bit, but like working with the same people and having the flexibility to kind of negotiate the terms beyond the rate to a load, and having expectations that that person was easy to get along with, or I know if I call Brian and Farmers Freight Company that load's going to get taken care of, and they don't call anybody else.
Yeah.
You start those relationships too. Like, hey, I know on the flip side for them that when they get a load in that area, they go, hey, I got a load for here. You got a truck up there? And like, no, well, not yet. Can you hold it for a little bit for me? I'll see if I can get something. If I'll see and make sure there isn't one in the pipeline that just hasn't been sent to me yet.
Yeah.
People are it works both ways.
Yeah.
People know you're going to be up there. They know who to call first.
Mm-hmm. You say the terms beyond the rate. Obviously, that's like the $1 million question, right? Like, what how do you differentiate on service? What matters to your side? What matters to the customer side? What are some examples of terms beyond the rate that kind of matter on both sides that you can find mutual ground with your customers on?
I think service is obviously a big part of it. I think for us too is being reliable. When you compare us to like a one truck organization or something like that, like, if my truck goes down, like today, I shut one truck down to do a radiator and put new tires on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a spare truck that I could send him with today. So there's no interruption in service. That truck driver's still running today. He's got something to do. I don't pay him to stay home, or he's not staying home, not making any money.
Mm-hmm.
Having that reliability to it. And some of the other terms too, like I thought about the other day, I had a load that was supposed to deliver in Waterloo yesterday. Well, some things happened and we weren't going to be able to make that Waterloo delivery work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, can we push that back to tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. I got a lot, set it down. We've got 10 trailers. So if we got 4 or 5 trucks, there's always probably an empty trailer sitting around. So if you get caught or in something like that where someone doesn't want to unload you, and you're like, okay, well, I don't have to panic. We can set this trailer down until we figure out what we're gonna do with it, and take care of it. It also allows us to do multiple loads, in a day, where the guy that I had one guy who's, he's going to be hooked to his 3rd trailer here in a little bit. And he's loaded, and he's picked up 2 loads. So, and he isn't going to go very far, but he's been working all day, and he's probably going to have 10 to 12 hours in a day of nonstop work. Not gonna have a whole lot of miles, but I have a lot of stop pays and stuff like that. And some of that part of that service is, I'm not handicapped by the fact that, hey, I just picked up a load in Cedar Rapids and now I can't do anything else. Where if it was, especially like the load he picked up in the middle of the day is a 150-mile run, and it can't deliver till tomorrow.
Yeah.
So instead of him working 6 hours today and only having like a couple 100 miles in, he went and picked up another load, and he's on another load, and everybody's hooked up and ready to go for tomorrow, and everybody got 300, 400, 500 miles in, or worked 10 to 12 hours. And the way we have it set up is they all get paid for the work they do, and I consider stop pay to be work. Do those kind of things. It just makes us more readily available.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of the service too. Is like, yeah, hey, I can go get that. The other day, somebody called me like, "Hey, I'm in a pickle. The first truck fell off. The second truck that's supposed to go get it has a sensor out. Like, hey, can you save me?" And it's like, I can get it loaded today, but I can't get it delivered tomorrow. But I can get it loaded. I can set it down. I'll come back and get it, and I'll have it delivered on Thursday. Does that work? And some of those negotiations too. I'm talking to somebody about a load today about they want it delivered at 7 a.m. and knowing the receiver, like, hey, I know that load doesn't need to be delivered at 7 a.m. Can you see about getting the appointment changed? And yep, you get the appointment changed, and get the appointment changed to a time that works better for us. Like, it's not going to work for us to be somewhere 250 miles away at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And just trying to negotiate some of those terms, making it work for you. And if it doesn't work, then don't take the load.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this comes back to only operating in certain areas, right? Because this sounds like it allows for flexibility on your operations. It allows for just better decisions, and then more conversations with your customers that know you and know kind of how you need to piece things together to make everything work.
Yeah, and it may hurt us in some areas too. People aren't going to ask us to do things that like deliver at 2 o'clock in the morning. So it cuts down on some of that stuff too. But I know that when they have a decent lane with a decent customer that is easy to get along with, that, hey, we've got a good carrier that will take care of that customer for us.
Yeah.
Or will take care of this for us, and we don't have to worry about it.
I'm curious. It sounds like you have a pretty clear sense of what you want to do and what you don't want to do, right? You won't go cross country. You won't do certain things here. And you mentioned when you first got your start, you got some lessons learned, weren't really making money on when it was kind of you just getting started with the trucking side. What were the main lessons that you learned from those early experiences and how does that change how you guys operate today?
I would say those early lessons, I look back on those things and I just realized like how much I like ran myself to death on some of those things to not really make a whole lot of money. Or I try and pencil things out on an hourly basis.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense to do that on an hourly basis? What is my time worth? And if I wasn't getting paid for my time, I'd hate to guess about, what my time was worth back then. And I think that's the thing that focusing on the efficiencies of things, and it was just so inefficient or something like that. Like you get stuck with something. I remember one time I got stuck with a load of distillers somewhere along the river. I sat there for a couple hours, and then at 3 o'clock, the union decided they weren't going to load any more trucks today. You got to wait till, 7 o'clock tomorrow morning to come back and unload.
Yeah.
So that's 16 hours of sitting and waiting.
A lot.
It's just lost time and revenue and money and stuff like that. Or you get a load going out there and then you don't have anything going back. With the load going out there didn't pay that well to begin with. And I just look around like there's probably still a lot of that happens. People still learning lessons. And I'm probably fortunate that it didn't matter a whole lot to me, but it was something that was very top of mind to me when you start bringing employees in.
Mm.
You know, I brought guys back from Wisconsin at night, because that I'm not going to make you sit out there you know, for 16 hours, waiting to unload. That's not something that I would want to do. I don't think that's a lot. I don't think that's something that anybody else really likes to do either. And, but just like, sleeping overnight in a truck, um, trying to get a jump on it, and then being stuck in line for another 2 to 3 hours in the morning. It's just like, it just wasn't worth it, and just making sure that it's all worth it, you know, and there's certain exceptions to every rule, but I that was maybe the biggest takeaway from when I was younger and stuff like that was, yeah, I don't have to do things for the experience anymore.
Mhm.
And, I need to make sure that I'm making money, and it gotten past that point where, you know, then also taking advantage of the technologies and stuff like that, and not trying to fight some of it, and making yourself as efficient as possible so you can do more
Mhm.
and be more able. Um, I Early on it was just for the experience, and now, but I, I did learn a lot from the experiences and things like that, and you gain a lot. But I think that's probably the biggest takeaway is just trying to, you know, not do, not getting myself in situations where you regret, being there in the first place. Like,
Yeah.
I should have known a little, you look a little more wide angled at things. And like when you're looking at a load, you don't just go, oh yeah, that sounds good.
Mm.
Then you get there and you come to find out that you don't get paid detention for the first 3 hours, and it usually takes 5 hours to unload it. And oh, by the way, we're only going to give you $30 an hour for detention after that. And you just like wasted a whole bunch of time and money, and you missed your reload and those kind of things too. Is just not just trying to understand those kind of things too. Like that takes a lot to figure out. Like I probably shouldn't have done that, and maybe thinking about it before you do it. That probably isn't a good idea right now.
Yeah, you talked about just making better decisions at this point, whether it's what you're willing to run some of these lanes for, where you're going. How do you do that better now? Is it just you just kind of mental note? Do you have this written down somewhere? Are you running numbers differently beforehand? Like how for someone who's kind of earlier in their career, what advice do you have to actually make that happen in practice?
For me now, it's just getting to experience and just actively thinking about those things. And I, I probably would take for granted a lot of these things now
Hmm.
because it probably comes naturally to me. But I also have a pretty good crew of truck drivers too, and sometimes that we get so comfortable in our own stuff that we make assumptions and then we screw something up, and that thing can happen. We get a little lax, and like for the most part, I think things move pretty smoothly and come pretty easily
Hmm.
for us. And then, but you get a little lax and you go, I just assumed you wanted me to do that, and no, I just assumed you knew, and making assumptions about those kind of things, and um, and you just get. I think for a lot of people too, like for me, like I don't have to think about like the Oshkosh to Burlington thing.
Hmm.
Going, okay, what am I going to do next? Like, what happens if this happens, and what happens if that happens? And just kind of thinking about like, what happens if we commit to hauling 100 loads this month for somebody, and they turn out to be just terrible loads.
Hmm.
Now we're committed to this and stuff like that. Like, what happens if we do that? And I stuff like that. Like, what happens if I take a load going here and something goes wrong, or like, maybe just thinking a little farther ahead than the next mile down the road, and I just be a little more active. I spend a lot of time looking at loads, talking about loads. And I almost don't even call on most of them because they just, I know that load, and I know that load, and like that load sucks. And I don't do beverage loads a lot anymore, like your pops and sodas.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of bad experiences with them, and you just find yourself fighting those kind of things, and sometimes some of those lessons have to be learned the hard way.
Mhm.
And I think for just about everybody else, like, but do you learn from the lessons, and what are you gonna do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Well, if the only thing left is soda loads, you know, or these loads that aren't very good, well, I need to find a new relationship that
Mhm.
can get me. And I mean, that's the biggest thing that I learned is forging relationships with people you can trust and people who will take care of you if you take care of them, and back and forth. And that doesn't just go for customers, but mechanics and getting things fixed and getting it done for the best rate. Because there's a big difference between what it can cost to get something fixed for mechanic from one place to another.
Yeah, it's just a lot of just knowing where you've been before and not repeating the same mistakes twice at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it can come down to like picking the right truck too. And
Mm.
I think about, you wouldn't dare want to drive around one of the trucks that we started with, doing what we're doing, because one of them were reliable. And even that spot right now, looking back at last year and trying to figure out what lessons did I learn from last year. It was probably a pretty decent year, but man, we had a lot of expenses, and our insurance is getting way up. Like, how can we do it better? Like, how can we do these things better? You know, trying to be better at it, not just accepting, you know, that's what it is and stuff like that. And I think far too many people in the trucking industry just think that's the way it's going to be because somebody tells them
Mm.
that's the way it's going to, that's the way it is. And, um, I know when I first started to, like, my dad told me, like, we were going to have to run like crazy to make it work, and work long hours, work 60, 70 hours a week. And obviously we still do some of that too, but I don't feel like we run like crazy either. And a lot of that comes from forging relationships too, and trying to keep things moving as much as possible, because that's, inevitably what matters the most in trucking is if you're not moving, if you don't have the truck on the road doing the work, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're not going to make any money.
Well, I think as we wrap up here, this is Trucking Tomorrow. So as we look ahead for the coming year, the coming couple of years, like what are your top priorities? What do you see on the horizon? What are you focused on going forward?
I would really like to maybe grow into this year. Um, I have reservations. I always have reservations about bringing more people in or trying to do more, and
Yeah.
failing commitments. One thing that I'm really like focusing on this year is focusing on the costs,
Mm.
trying to manage the costs and making sure they're making the right decision cost wise too, while also trying to improve revenues, but trying to manage the cost because everything has just cost so much too. And for the first month, it's been trying to figure out like making sure they're making conscious effort to quote costs and find the best cost and try and keep the overhead and those things down. Um, it would I would like to grow it a little bit, but I also want growth to be sustainable,
Mm.
and I don't want to grow at the sacrifice of service and commitment. Um, I don't want to bring in people just to run them in a truck, and then we don't have enough for them to do, or trucks are always broke down and things like that. And I think the trucking economy is going to get better as we go forward. Um, but just being smart about growth, but trying to control the costs, is a big a priority of mine. Looking back at 2024, with a lot of maintenance costs and stuff like that. We put a new engine in the truck, and hopefully in those things. I was just talking about insurance costs today with our insurance people, and like how do we better manage the cost? Like if we're doing these things, like trying to get, how do we reduce those costs to the things that we're really not utilizing that much, and finding better services at better price points and those kind of things. Trying to get our name out there a little more in 2025, try and do more sales and be more prevalent. And I think the biggest hurdle to 2025 is just getting more people to know who you are. Because people aren't going to call you, and they're not going to use you if they don't know who you are. And I'm going to have to take some chances here and there on different things and different people, and continuing to ask questions about things and trying to find answers and trying to help solve problems and take care of the people who have gotten you to this point too.
Awesome. So measured growth, manage costs, and get your name out there. Seems like a good recipe for the year.
I guess we'll see.
Awesome.
Oh,
Well, Brian, really thankful for you coming on the pod here today. I know you're out on the road, so thanks for calling in from the truck. But best of luck with the pickup, and hope you get home safely tonight.
sounds good. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Trucking Tomorrow. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. And if you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave us a 5-star review.
Truck base, you're always tough.